The New Age community out there is talking all the time nowadays about 3 dimension, 4 dimension, 5 dimension. And as a physicist and a person trained in the math and physics and the sciences, hard sciences specifically, the first time I heard it never made sense to me. I was actually baffled. Back in physics or mathematics, we don't use the words dimension in that way, or at least I was trying to bring my training to understanding this 3D. We're gonna go to the 4D, and we're gonna go all enlightened in the 5D. The first reaction was like, wait a minute, we have 3 dimensions in space, 1 dimension time. That's Einstein's relativity. That adds up to 4 dimension. What is that, 4/5? I'm not a string theorist. I'm actually trained in condensed matter, and I'll come back to that training in a moment. But I knew about the string theorists and their ideas of manifolds and membranes and 11 or 12 dimensional space. And I've heard talks by Brian Greene, one of the string theorists who popularizes that theory. And they were like about hidden dimensions and rolled dimensions. I'm like, okay, wait. What are we talking about here? Again, back to this humanity is rising into the 4th dimension. What does that mean? So I had to dig around through some books very carefully to open my inner ear, actually more like my heart sensitivity, kind of like sniff exactly what people mean by talking about dimensions. And it looks like the way the words are used in the new age community, they're not exactly the way how scientists or conventional scientists use dimensions. And that, of course, brings all sorts of confusion, because when you're talking about how we are ready to like vibrate off the planet into 5th-dimensional space, any classically trained scientist will dismiss you on the spot, unless they have some patience or curiosity like me to go and dig around and say, okay, let's figure it out. It seems like those 3 dimension, 4 dimension, 5 dimension spaces are more about energetic frequency or energetic levels. And the moment I kind of hit on this concept, energetic levels, the whole picture clicked into place for me. And that is because, again, as I said, I'm actually trained in condensed matter physics. Yes, my PhD eventually ended up being in the theoretical astrophysics, where I did a lot of computer programming and modeling and statistical models, but that's beside the point. The point is that most of my undergraduate and graduate training was in condensed matter. And condensed matter physics, very few people actually are familiar with that. A lot of times I actually feel sad about that, but at the same time, there's a good reason why. The condensed matter physics is the physics that deals with the collective properties of matter. And on a very pragmatic, mundane level, this is where physicists go and play with materials, with conductors, semiconductors. They create new exciting materials, fullerenes, for instance, the graphene. All those people emerge from the corners of the condensed matter field. The entire hardware of our computers is also coming from the condensed matter physics, because that is where you explore the collective properties of those electrons that are bound into molecules or into metals in different substances. Collective. Did you hear that? I was meditating one day about my life choices and path, and I remember back then when I was in undergraduate and I had to make a decision in which subfield of physics to focus or concentrate my training. And I didn't know anything back then. I was like 20, 21 probably. And I made my choice in a very unserious way because I had kind of picked up a fight with some professor, and he disliked me so much to a point where every time he saw me down the hallway, he could spot and like lecture me on my ways of disrespecting him. Those are my Iranian days when I used to pick up fights with the establishment. Anyway, so, and I knew that he was actually involved with the particle physics and those more mathematical branches of physics. So I was like, okay, forget it. I'm not going there. And the only other viable option for me, because I was very strong in mathematics and theoretical physics, the only other branch of physics that was on par with particle physics and the string theory and the astrophysics was condensed matter. I didn't know anything about condensed matter, but I said condensed matter it is. And I did go, and I found fascinating topics within that subfield of physics, which, by the way, it's so huge that it has its own separate American Physical Society annual conference. It's called the March meeting. They don't have any other physicists but condensed matter physicists. All the other physicists have their own conferences. So back to that. What is the connection between this condensed matter physics rand and the new age idea of the 3-dimension, 4-dimension, 5th-dimension enlightened space? Well, 5th dimension is not so much enlightened, but compared to where we are now. I've read books, I've heard people channeling, talking about 12 dimensions. That's okay. That's okay. The point is, in condensed matter, when we were taught, think about the atoms. If you look into the atoms of, let's say, a plastic, you will see that those atoms are very strong, and each of them hold on to all of their electrons. Here, I hope you remember at least some basic things from your high school chemistry class. So the atoms have those electrons, and they hold on to them. So all those electrons are bound and belong to that atom. Within that atom, they have energetic states. And this is where physics starts talking like New Ager. Because within an atom, you have energetic states. The electrons are not concentrated particles. There's some fields. Physicists say they're neither particles, they're neither null waves, they exhibit both. We don't know. I say we don't know the nature. We know how to work with them, even though we don't fully understand the nature of the electrons. And so think about this like distributed space within the atom. And all the electrons are kind of like that spaces. But what distinguishes each space, each electron from another electron, is their energetics. And there are strict rules about the fact, which is called the Pauli exclusion principle, that you cannot have two electrons with identical energetic spaces. So each electron has its own energetic space, and they kind of layer their rules. I'm not going to go in quantum mechanics for you. But what I wanted to do is now jump to metals. Metals are different from plastic. Energetically speaking, from the perspective of a condensed matter physicist, what happens in the metals is something very interesting. The outermost electrons of each atom, and if you remember your high school chemistry, those would be the valent electrons. So each atom can contribute 1 or 2 or 3 from the outermost shell. They become so loose that they actually almost do not belong to a specific atom, and they create this collective sea of electrons that belong to the entire metal piece. You can think of a metal box or a metal block. It doesn't matter. Any metal piece is actually playing this game. The more tight bound electrons still belong to each individual atom, but because we have so many, and I don't know of a name from everyday life to tell you how many there are. In the sciences, I always start with Avogadro's number, which is 10 multiplied by itself 23 times. So we'll say it's 10 to the 23rd power, give or take something. I'm not going to go into details here for you, but this is your starting point. So this is trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of electrons that have banded together into one unified sea. And still, the rules apply. No two electrons can have identical energetic state. So what happens on this condensed matter level, on this unified collective level of electrons, they begin to actually band together within the big collective C. And the condensed matter physicists talk about energetic bands. And you will see that within those bands, there are certain group of electrons that fit within those bands, just because their energetic level fits that band. Then there's a gap, and then there's another band where another group of electrons are sitting there. And the reason they're sitting there, this is not physical. This is about energetic state. They're all sitting in the same physical space, but energetically, and this is why I get super excited, although it boggles the mind. All the electrons are within the same space. They're on top of each other, if you wish to picture it that way. And yet, they don't interact with each other unless specific conditions are met. And an electron from one band can jump into another band only if they're energized by light. Light usually comes and has to bring exactly the right amount of energy for them to jump. A little bit less, they can't use it. A little bit more, they can use what they need and just let the remaining energy pass through. But you need the minimum threshold. And do you hear what I'm hearing? When you start talking about bands in the solid state or condensed matter physics, you can take the whole framework and toss it into the New Age community and actually fits. Only now we're talking about humans, each of us having individual field. And energetically, what we call reality is when we actually band together with other people with similar fields, or at least we have to have significant overlap energetically between our field and their field, and that becomes our shared reality. And the more shared, the more we tend to take it as a validation that it becomes more real. I'm not gonna go. That's a whole another rant for another day about what reality is. But the fact remains that we do band energetically. You can meet someone and all of a sudden you're talking the same language. They could be coming from a different culture. They can speak a different language. They can have a completely different educational, cultural background. On paper, they could be like, wow, they can vote for the opposite political party. It doesn't matter. You click and you understand each other. And that's what I'm saying. We're playing that electronic game on a larger scale. And then someone can come on the books, perfect match for you, and it's just not working because it's not a physical match. It's an energetic. There's something there. And this is where you can also see the law of attraction, because in physics and engineering, that's really the resonance. Something has to be an energetic match for you to be able to band together and stay within that band. And so circling back to the concept of three-dimensional Earth and four-dimensional Earth, I think this relates to our humanity, collective groupings within bands, and the reality, we live the reality on top of each other. Your neighbor, the neighbor across the street, live in the same neighborhood, and each of you can see a different reality, play out a different reality, because it depends on your energetic state. And so you might connect with someone across the globe and not connect with your neighbor just because there's no overlap. They will be in a completely energetic band. That's what the condensed matter physicists will call it. And so that is where that 3-dimension, 4-dimension, 5-dimension, and even 12-dimension talk comes. It's not about the mathematical dimensions X, Y, Z, time, space. It is more about the energetic banding together into groups. And each group, because it groups based on overlaps of their energetics, whatever is overlapping holds that band as the core of their reality. So if you band together with people who believe that someone has to lose in order for you to gain, your reality reflects that, because everybody within your band, agrees and plays according to those rules. And that, I would say, it's perhaps third dimension or fourth dimension. I don't know. I'm not an expert on how the dimensions are arranged. On the other hand, if you're someone who is waking up to the realization that there's another game that you can play, that there are solutions out there that could be win-win, that both sides win, nobody has to win for the other one nobody has to lose for the other side to win, you have moved yourself to a different energetic band. You're still in the same house, the same neighborhood, the same language, the same country, the same politicians, the same TV, but your game is different. And you're going to be within the band where other people are playing that game. You can never now interact or overlap with the lower bands. And again, lower bands is just simply the way how it's arranged. And here's another fascinating food for thought. Again, coming from condensed matter physics. This is where my physicist mind said, hold on, in semiconductors, we introduce different atoms within a substance, and they provide these steps in between the bands. Normally, in a normal material, well, normal, I meant non-semiconducting material, you will have isolated bands with gaps. And if the gaps are huge, electrons cannot jump. They're bound there. Even if electron is ready to jump and try something more energetic, the space between the band within the electron and the next is prohibitive. However, physicists, specifically in the semiconducting industry, and branches of science, they know how to dope. And dope means they know how to introduce other atoms or impurities in a sense. I don't like to call them impurities in everyday life. In science, it's okay because it's a neutral term. In life, it's like, oh, impurity has the connotation of dirt, but it's not. It's more like you introduce a foreign material, and that creates those step-ups through the forbidden gap. This is where all those people who come in the New Age community, they'll be called, who come to wake up or help the rest of the humanity to jump to the next band. They serve as those intermediate step up points energetically, so they bring higher energy, because naturally they're connected with the higher band, but they also resonate with the lower band, and people from the lower band who are ready can actually connect with them, interact, and use them as a stepping stone for their new reality, moving from a lower energetic game of scarcity and lack and zero-sum game to another level game of win-win and abundance. Food for thought. There's some my rantings for today. They came out actually surprisingly physics. I meant to talk about the moon in Cancer since it's still in Cancer, but I guess we will leave that for another day.